And this is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today we are going to be discussing the wild card and divisional round playoffs. So I'm pretty excited for how this is going. So in case you're wondering, for the game we're simming today, what I did is I had a random number generator and I said, all right, choose number between 1 and 4. And I had the matchups written down. And I went by the teams' names, alphabetically speaking, for the AFC and then the NFC, and I got number 3, which was Kansas City at LA. So ironically enough, it would be the second year in a row where the NFC team that's playing in the Super Bowl will be playing in their home stadium. So anyways, without further ado, let's just start. So this video, like I said, is going to be discussing the playoffs up to this point, and we have a lot to discuss. So I'm going to kind of, I don't want to say rush through the wild card round because it wasn't as entertaining as a divisional round. So we're going to go in the order that the matchups themselves were played. So we had 2 matchups on Saturday, January 15th. The first of which was the Las Vegas Raiders at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now this was actually a pretty good game. So early and often, I mean, this game was not necessarily as back and forth as it could have been, but it was still a very good back and forth game. Derek Carr threw the ball a lot of times, and he didn't have the best stat line, but he did throw for over 300 yards. The running game was not really great for the Raiders, and Darren Waller was their leading receiver. But the Bengals won this game because they had a better balance of offense with running the ball and throwing the ball. They also did not have any interceptions. Burrow came up clutch when they needed him to. Kicker came up clutch when they needed him to. So it was a good game for the Bengals. Jamar Chase, massive year, followed up his amazing start to his rookie, his NFL career with a great postseason performance in his first ever postseason game. So I mean, this team is ready to go. This team looked ready to go. And then we got an offensive blowout as the New England Patriots went to play the Buffalo Bills. Now, earlier in the year, the Bills and Patriots played, of course, twice. And in Buffalo, the Patriots pulled off the win, but it was in that weather game, so we kind of were not knowing what to expect. Bills Nation showed up. Bills Mafia showed up. The team was ready to go, and they played at such a high level. The Bills throttled the Patriots. It wasn't even close, to 47-17. I mean, it was just a complete blowout. They had I think it was 35-0 lead at halftime. It was pretty clear the Bills were going to win this game. They were going. They were strong. They were the the Bills dominated. Josh Allen went off. So the Bills deserved the win. The Patriots, I mean, Mac Jones got into the playoffs as a rookie. You got to give him credit for that. It was a learning experience for him. So then we get to the Sunday games, Sunday the January 16th. Now we had 3 games on this day. The first of which was the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now this was the one game I didn't get to watch any of, but life goes on. I had it recorded, but I'd gotten the news broken to me by numerous people about what the scores were and stuff, and I'm just like, all right, it's not worth watching the recording if I know my team's going to get blown out. But anyways, basically, right in the beginning of the game, Tampa Bay just started controlling the game. They were able to run all over, throw all over the Eagles' offense. The Eagles' offense wasn't able to do a single thing until garbage time. But, I mean, the Buccaneers, they controlled this game. They were able to do whatever they wanted, despite not being without their top 2 running backs, being without Godwin, being without, of course, Antonio Brown. They were able to do what they wanted with the Eagles, and it kind of was eye-opening. Jalen Hurts looked like completely lost and overmatched by an elite Tampa Bay defense. So again, the running game non-existent. Should have been better than it was, but they were able to just pressure Hurts. So Tampa Bay easily moved on. Not Brady's best game, but still a good enough game. Then we had the 49ers traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. in another matchup of a very historic rivalry here. And one of the things was, I saw an article before this game saying that this was going to be the most important game of their historic rivalry, and I'm kind of like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Whatever. So this game, right in the beginning of the game, San Francisco started winning. They took an early lead. Dallas came storming back. San Francisco almost blew it, but they did manage to hold on to the game, 23-17. Now, of course, Cowboys fans and Dak Prescott alike are blaming that ref because the ref got in Dak's way and pushed into Dak Prescott. It's a rule that the refs must touch the football and place the football for every single down. It has happened before. There was a game over a decade ago between the Eagles and the Falcons where the Eagles were on the 1 yard line, a couple seconds left. A ref had to touch the ball, and he didn't get there quick enough. It's happened before. It will happen again. Dak Prescott spoke out about it, got fined. It's not just Dallas this has happened to. That's the point I'm trying to make. It's happened to many teams before. That's just the one example. The Eagles example, of course, is one that comes to mind. It's going to happen again. So you just got to get over the loss. It's tough. It's brutal. I know you lost to a historic rivalry in San Francisco, but I mean, San Francisco, the way their defense was playing, D'Amico Ryans, their defensive coordinator, he is gunning for a head coach job. He looks so ready. He looks so talented. So, the last game on that Sunday was between the Chiefs and the Steelers. Now, the Steelers, going into the game, the Steelers and the Eagles were both kind of looked at as kind of like, you guys made the playoffs? Okay. Now, this was considered Roethlisberger's last real game because it's expected that he retires after, of course, this 2021 season. And Roethlisberger actually didn't do horrible. He didn't do good, but he didn't do horrible. He did get 2 touchdowns. He didn't throw a pick, but he only got just over 200 yards. In the run game, Najee Harris was completely stifled. The offensive line just looked lost. The defense wasn't able to produce like you hoped. So there were definite problems for this team. They did get to Mahomes. They did sack him a decent amount of the time. But Kansas City, I mean, with the way they've been playing lately, Mahomes just torched this team. He had 5 touchdowns on the game. Kels threw for a touchdown. So they had 6 passing touchdowns. The run game was decent. At least Jerick McKinnon had a solid. It's one of those things where this team was ready to go. Travis Kelce broke out. He had another big game. Byron Pringle was somewhat surprising. He got a pair of touchdowns on the night. Their defense, well, it wasn't necessarily really in Roethlisberger's face all day. They still did more than enough. They held them to 21. Kansas City easily got past Pittsburgh. So the last game of the wild card weekend was the Cardinals at the Rams. This was a highly touted game. A lot of people were expecting a back and forth shootout. It didn't end up being that. It ended up being yet another blowout of the wild card round. And the Rams just handled the Cardinals 34-11. They took care of their NFC West rivals. It wasn't a pretty game. I mean, we saw the Budda Baker injury, of course. That's probably I don't want to say highlight, the low light of the game. It was a very scary injury. Then you see, was it Akers that ran him over? And immediately people were like, oh, he's celebrating because he's taunting him. That's not what happened if you watch the play. He didn't see that Budda got hurt. He just ran over him. And then he just kind of goes, yes, let's go, great run. And then you had Cooper Kupp, of course, next to him. And he got pushed away by a ref for whatever reason. But, I mean, I kind of lost respect for that ref for that. Cooper Kupp is just, I love Cooper Kupp at this point. So, next we get to the divisional round. So to recap the wild card round real quick here, the problem with the wild card round was we had 2 games that were close and 4 blowouts. The 2 seeds crushed the 7 seeds. I mean, they both won. The Eagles game was technically a 2-possession game, but it really wasn't. It was a 16-point game, so it technically was, but it wasn't. Chiefs game, they won by 21, so it was 3-possession. And of course, the Patriots got clobbered by 30, and the Rams beat the Cardinals by 23. And then the other 2 games, 7-point win for the Bengals and 6-point win for the 49ers. So 2 out of 4, 2 out of 6 were good competitive games. The divisional round, though, okay. So the matchups were Cincinnati at Tennessee, San Francisco at Green Bay, LA Rams at Tampa Bay, and Buffalo at Kansas City. And this, oh my goodness. So, first things first. The first game was Cincinnati at Tennessee. Now, a lot of, fans were looking at this game and were saying, all right, there's a good chance that Cincinnati can get the win. If you watch the game, the announcers were kind of, at the beginning of the game, all right, Derrick Henry's back. Titans are going to run all over them. How did it end up going? So, the Cincinnati Bengals didn't get the best performance of his life out of Joe Burrow. Burrow did get good yards, just under 350, but he didn't throw for a touchdown, and he had a pick. The run game showed up. Mixon, he had a decent game. He had a rushing touchdown. Jamar Chase showed up. He had a couple big plays. T. Higgins, same thing, couple big plays. But their defense was able to get to Tannehill big time. They got 3 interceptions off of Tannehill. So that's exactly what they needed to do. That's what they wanted. That's what they got. On the flip side for the Titans, Tannehill, like I said, he didn't do all that hot. He threw for 220 yards. He had 1 touchdown, but he had the 3 picks. Ugly picks at that. The running game, so Derrick Henry wasn't effective. He ran the ball 20 times for only 62 yards, although he did get a touchdown. Dante Foreman actually outshined him to an extent, as he had 66 yards on only 4 carries. A.J. Brown was the receiver of choice for Tannehill this game. He had just under 150 yards. He did get a touchdown, but I mean, it wasn't a pretty game for Tannehill. He only threw the ball 24 times, and he ended up getting picked 3 of those times. So you're getting picked 1/8 of the throws you make. That's not good for an NFL quarterback. 12.5. You throw the 12.5% of the time you threw the ball, you got picked. Not good in any way, shape, or form. The defense wasn't really able to do all that much. They weren't able to force too many turnovers. So that's what ended up sinking the Titans. Bengals made a McPherson last-second field goal, won the game on that last play. So it was a beautiful start to divisional round weekend. The 1 seed was upset, sent home. So then we get to the next game. And this was the 49ers at the Packers. So the 1 seeds both played on the same day. So this game was pretty much, the 49ers went into this game with the game plan of, we're going to run the ball. This is how we can beat the Packers. We have to run the ball. Mitchell and Deebo Samuel both ran the ball more than 10 times. So they were ready to go. Mitchell had 17 carries. Deebo Samuel had 10 carries. So they were rearing to play strong football. Compare that to Jimmy Garoppolo, who only threw the ball 19 times. He did not get a touchdown. He had 1 interception. He had just over 130 yards. Now, the receiving game, of course, no one really broke out. Kittle and Deebo Samuel were the 2 big names. There were a bunch of check down passes to Elijah Mitchell, Deebo Samuel, a couple of them were. So, Brandon Ayuk was completely shut off this game. He didn't get a single catch. So, there's that. On defense, I mean, they were good on defense, but they weren't great. They bent, but they didn't break. They got to Rodgers, is the big thing. They got 5 sacks on Rodgers, which isn't easy to do. Armstead and Bosa each got 2. So they were. You go to the Packers. So Rodgers and the Pack entered this game with the expectation of, we're the home team. We're playing here in Lambeau. Lambeau's a huge advantage for us. We know what we got to do. So they also wanted to run the ball, and they have the offense to throw the ball as well. So Aaron Jones wasn't all that effective running the ball. He averaged 3.4 yards per carry. A.J. Dillon, 3.6. Dillon did get a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers, on the flip side, did throw for 225 yards. So there's that. He didn't have a touchdown, but he didn't have a pick. Aaron Jones stepped up. He caught 9 passes for 129 yards. So he made his name as a pass catcher. Devontae Adams, 9 for 90. Everyone else combined for 2 catches for 6 yards. So heavy offense, pretty much. A couple players. Now, the Packers also got a good amount of sacks in this game. They had 4. So in a defensive battle, the 49ers emerged on top in a not too surprising, but somewhat surprising battle there. I mean, the 49ers defense was always better than the Packers defense, but the Packers offense being so much better than the 49ers offense, at least on paper, made it, to me at least, an easy Packers W. But San Francisco proved us wrong. DeMeco Ryans, I'm going to give him a shout out again. That defensive coordinator for the team looks ready to go. He should be getting a head coach offer at minimum this year. I'd be shocked if he doesn't. I mean, he's just great head coach. He's showing that he's ready to go. He might want to wait one more year just to, improve his playmaking and all that good stuff, but play calling, I should say. So the next game that we had, so I should say the 49ers won that game 13-10 on a last-second field goal. So the first two games both ended on last-second, last-play field goals. Very, very intriguing first day of the divisional round. Could day 2 do any better? Well, Rams at Buccaneers. This was another game where, okay, this was going to be good. Now, if you look at the stats, both teams had very good games, very good stats. Stafford ended the game throwing for 366 yards and 2 touchdowns, only 0 picks. So he had a good game. On the running part of the game, that's the problem with the Rams. So Cam Akers was the workhorse back of the game. He ran the ball 24 times for only 48 yards. So he struggled. On the receiving part of the game, Cooper Kupp had 9 catches for 180 yards and a touchdown. Odell, 6 for 69. So these guys were ready to go. Higbee, 4 for 51. Everyone else just got like 1 or 2 catches. Notably for this team, though, well, the defense was ready to go. They were strong. They were talented. They were doing what they could do, especially early in the game. The notable problem for this team was that they fumbled the ball and lost the ball 4 separate times. So that right there was a massive red flag. It wasn't good in any way, shape, or form for them. They couldn't afford to do that, but they did. It just, they had one play where they should have, it should have been a touchdown to completely ice the game, but Cam Akers fumbled inside the 5. You cannot do that. You can't do that. It's so brutal. It was an awful game, awful start of the game, awful play there, just a bad fumble. Later on in the game, Cam Akers suffered another horribly timed fumble. So it ended up putting the Buccaneers in position where they could tie the game. Now, when I say that, I should mention that at one point, the Rams were up in this game 27-3. And towards the end of the game, in the fourth quarter, with less than a minute to go, or about a minute to go, the Buccaneers were able to force a fumble of Akers once more, and they ended up getting a touchdown to tie the game up at 27 apiece. So next, we'll just look at the Buccaneers here real quick. So the Bucs had a solid game. Brady threw the ball a lot of times. He threw it over 50 times, and he had 329 yards. He only had 1 touchdown to 1 pick, but Leonard Fournette was the team's top running back, and he was really the only one who did anything. He did run for a pair of touchdowns, including a very critical one at the end of the game that put them in position to tie it up. Of course, you can't tie it up because they need to get the extra point, but put him in a great position. 4th and inches. Rams were expecting a QB sneak, and the Buccaneers said, nah, we're just going to, do a quick pitch to Fournette. Got a 7-yard touchdown rather than pick up 1 yard. Good call by them. Evans had a great game for the team. Fournette, Gronkowski, they just did their check down passes. Scott Miller was like the hot receiver towards the end of the game, so they kind of disrespected Mike Evans at one point. The Rams defense did. They let him get open. That's what gave them a huge play, chunk yards down the field. So that was a big mistake for the Rams, but the defense for the Buccaneers was ready to go. They were good at stopping the run, but as you expect, they didn't do all that great against the pass. So, especially early on. So with the game tied at 27 apiece, there was just about under a minute to go. Rams have the ball. They got a couple quick passes down the field to Cooper Kupp, one of which, beautiful pass, floated, perfect pass, perfectly thrown by Matthew Stafford. got them down. They didn't have a timeout, so they ran to the line of scrimmage, spiked the ball. 3 seconds left, and they're all pumped up. Matt Gay comes on, kicks the game-winning field goal. That game ended just, oh man, that was just a perfect game. Beautiful ending, back and forth game. Well, you know, it started off as a complete blowout. Rams almost blew it, but they came back. Stafford came up. Cooper Kupp came up when they needed to the most, and they got their team the win. It was an amazing game. You know, Tom Brady was heartbroken, which is always a plus for us Brady haters. So, just, you know, the game was perfect. It gave all these Bucs fans hope, but it ended up hurting them in the end. I mean, I shouldn't be laughing at that. Trust me, as an Eagles fan, I've been through enough heartbreak. But, I mean, it's brutal. It was a great game. Stafford did everything he could. Cooper Kupp did everything he could. The Rams defense saw that they have some flaws. This was the second week in a row where the Rams jumped out to an early lead, and they didn't almost blow it in their game against Arizona, but they did struggle and blow it against Tampa Bay. They cannot do this in the NFC Championship game against San Francisco. San Francisco versus LA. Great NFC Championship battle. Of course, this game will be held in the stadium we're currently simmed at right now, SoFi Stadium, should say. So it'll be a big game, divisional rivals. Both teams won one. To watch that for an NFC Championship game. It's not like the same historic rivals we've seen in the past, but hey, you know what? Rams 49ers NFC West showdown should be good for the ratings. So lastly, we had another crucial, amazing battle, 3-seed Buffalo at 2-seed Kansas City. Now, of course, this was last year's AFC Championship game, so it's a rematch. And how did this one go? So this was another game that was intense. Now, to cap off divisional round week, I told my friends, I texted a couple of them, I'm like, listen, this Kansas City Buffalo game could be a complete blowout, which it shouldn't be, but it could be, and it would still be the best divisional round, arguably in NFL history, just because of how good the rest of the games were. It's just how strong the rest of the games were, how good every other game was. Just, this game could have been horrible, and it still would have been the best, because we had 3 amazing games. We had 2 back-and-forth contests, and we had an amazing comeback that fell just short. And, of course, Brady lost, so that's always a plus. But, again, that's my opinion. So, this game comes out, and it was an offensive battle, back and forth to the end. Allen goes out, throws the ball 37 times, and ends up getting 329 yards with 4 touchdowns. Now, notably, all 4 of those touchdowns went to Gabriel Davis, who set an NFL record for most receiving touchdowns in a game. He also had 201 yards on 8 receptions, so Davis just went off. Cole Beasley had a solid game stretching the field, and in a somewhat surprising move, Stephon Diggs only had 3 catches for 7 yards. He was pretty much silenced by Kansas City's defense. Other players, no one really stood out on offense. Dawson Knox also didn't have a great game. So now for the running game for them, Allen led the way, 68 yards on 11 carries. Devin Singletary did get a touchdown, but he only ran for 26 yards on 10 carries. Now the defense was ready to play as well. They showed up at times. I should say they weren't really ready to play. They got a couple sacks, but that was it. Kansas City on the flip side, so Mahomes threw the ball 44 times, and he ended the game with 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. So technically, Allen outdueled Mahomes. Now in the running game, Mahomes did run for a touchdown. Mecole Hardman ran for a touchdown. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who came back from injury, had a solid game. Not great, but he did enough. Jerick McKinnon, who had a great game in the wild card round, had an okay game. He struggled a bit, but he wasn't bad. He wasn't a liability. Tyreek tried to do a run once. It got stuffed for a loss, so they're like, all right, we're not doing this. Now in the receiving game, Tyreek Hill went off, 11 receptions for 150 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had another big game, which saw him end the game with 86 catches. Sorry, I'm all over the place. 8 catches for 96 yards. And Byron Pringle once more had a touchdown, so he continued. Their defense played decent, not great. Now, This game, the end of this game, was just completely insane, intense, however you want to look at it. It was amazing. So, you're looking at the end of the game here, and right off the bat, Kansas City takes a lead with about a minute to go in the game, less than a minute to go in the game. And it looks like, all right, Kansas City's going to win this game. They have a 4-point lead. What's Buffalo going to do? Buffalo goes and drives down the field and scores a touchdown. Now, of course, McVay makes a smart move, goes for the extra point, makes it. So now Buffalo has a 3-point lead at this point, and they looked ready to go. They were extremely ready to go. They were extremely excited. They're pumped. It's like, all right, we're looking like we're in the AFC Championship game. Looks like we're going to be able to play host to Kansas City or to Cincinnati. We're excited. Mahomes channeled his inner Mahomes, drove down the field, got them in line to go for the field goal. They kick the field goal. We go to overtime. In overtime, controversy begins. We have the coin toss. Kansas City wins it. They, of course, elect to receive because of where the game's been going. They drive down the field, and they get a touchdown, contested touchdown. Travis Kelce got it. I didn't mention his touchdown because I wanted to mention it here. Kelce gets a touchdown, and it was like a little delayed because they weren't 100% sure if it was really a touchdown, but watching the replays, it was. He did get his left foot down. That was a big thing. So Kansas City would win the game 42-36. Now, I say controversial because now, just like every time when we have a playoff game like this, fans are calling for the league to change the playoff rules. You should do, each team gets one offensive possession at minimum. That's the problem with the NFL right now. That's one of the problems with the NFL right now. A lot of fans are calling for it. Kansas City proposed a rule change in 2019 that got voted down. So ironically, that helped them. But still, it's noted because it's not good. It wasn't pretty. Bills fans they feel cheated, and rightfully so. And there's been a lot of games where we've had something like this, where teams have felt cheated because of a rule. And a rule that had been proposed to be changed 5 years before, didn't happen. So that's where we're at. But oh my gosh, the divisional round was just amazing this year. All 4 games ended on the last play of the game. It's not like we had any blowouts. You look at the divisional rounds from other years, and usually you have at least one real stinker. Or, you look at it and all 4 games were one-possession games, but they were also ending on onside kick attempts because a team was down by, 11 points, they got the touchdown, and then they go for the onside kick. They end up losing by 5 points or 4 points or 3 points. Let's just say they went for the 2 and failed or made it or whatever. So it's technically a one-possession game, but it wasn't. It wasn't the same. One team clearly won the game. So that's where we're at. I mean, at this point in time, the NFC and AFC Championship games are set up. So the NFC Championship game is San Francisco at LA. The AFC Championship game is Cincinnati at Kansas City. So Cincinnati, of course, is the only team to beat Kansas City since November. I gotta look that one up. But that game was amazing. If that game is a telltale sign of what's to come, we're in for an amazing AFC Championship game. Kansas City's last loss before that would have been October, so I undersold them. If we can get another Week 17 battle, we're in for a treat. We are in for a treat. Now, as for the Rams and 49ers, I mean, these two teams, we're going to have another good game here. It's exciting. We're going to have 2 hopefully very good games. We're going to know the AFC team before the NFC team representing in the Super Bowl. So, of course, I'm looking forward to it. For the 2 games, the 49ers beat the Rams 27-24 in Week 18. It was a crucial game. My apologies. So the 49ers did win both games against the Rams. They actually crushed the Rams 31-10. So the thing is, it's one of those things where people always look at it and they'll say, all right, it's so tough to beat the same team 3 times in a year. That's true. But at the same time, who knows? With the way the 49ers defense has been playing, anything's possible. If I had to guess, if I had to speculate how these two games are going to go, and I intended to end this video with me speculating how I think the AFC Championship games are going to go. So, crazy research. I feel like Kansas City is going to be able to outduel Cincinnati. The Bengals were able to pull off the victory in Cincinnati. Now you got to go to Arrowhead. Arrowhead's an extremely difficult stadium to play in. So as much as I hate to say it, I do think the Chiefs will win and represent the AFC in the Super Bowl for the third year in a row. I have no real beef with Kansas City, don't get me wrong, but I don't like seeing these dynasties. I hated seeing New England. I'm not a fan of Kansas City, but I'm not a hater of Kansas City, so it's one of those things where it's kind of like, all right, as much as I don't care for them, I don't hate them, so I just don't want to see the dynasty at this point. As for the NFC, I feel like the Rams are going to be able to win. You know, it's going to come down to how the beginning of the game goes. And if the Rams take an early lead, will they actually be able to hold it? That's my thing with the Rams. Can they hold it? I don't necessarily fear Jimmy Garoppolo as much as I would Brady. You know, Jimmy G's not able to drive down the field like Brady can. So I do think the Rams will win this game, which would set up, ironically enough, Kansas City at LA for the Super Bowl. And I would have to guess, you know, you have two coaches, two teams that are playing for a lot. One is really, you know, of course, we've seen Kansas City. They've won the Super Bowl recently. They won 2019 over San Francisco. And then they lost last year to Tampa Bay. Stafford has never made a Super Bowl in his life. Stafford has never made a championship game in his life. Stafford had made one playoff game before this year, and they lost to Dallas. And they got beaten pretty bad. So there's that. So will Stafford be able to shine in the big time? I think he will. I think Cooper Kupp will be able to do what he can. The big thing to me is how will the run game do for the Rams? But if I had to speculate, I would say that I think in that potential Super Bowl, I'm probably thinking more with emotion than anything. I think the Rams would be able to pull off the victory and come out as Super Bowl 56 champs in their home stadium. But at the same time, is LA really a home stadium? Is it really that big of an advantage? Like, if you had the Super Bowl in Philadelphia, Green Bay, I'm just trying to think, Tampa Bay, state fans that are there, Buffalo, fan bases that actually show up to their games, huge difference than LA. LA has had a lot of games where the fans aren't there. So the home field advantage to me isn't the biggest wash. It's not like it's huge for the Rams, but so what I'm going to do here, just to end the stream here after this play, I'm going to just fast sim, just so we see how the game goes. It's not going to let me, is it? Because I'm in the middle of a play. Alright. So, I mean, I'm hoping, if you ask me who I'm rooting for to win the Super Bowl, I'm at the point where I'm just kind of rooting for anyone that isn't the Kansas City, just because I have no reason to root for Kansas City. Reed already got his ring, so I mean, there's that. But will we get a battle here? It looks like, oh, we actually got a little bit of a battle here. If I had to root for a team though, I would probably root for, I'm going to probably end up rooting for the NFC team, just because San Francisco knocked out Dallas and LA knocked out Brady. And of course, the Bucs had knocked out the Eagles, so they got revenge for the Eagles. On the flip side, in the AFC, you can't root against the Bengals. So this is like the most neutral I've ever felt for championship week, because there's no team I extremely dislike. Like, even if Kansas City wins, I'm not too upset. But anyways, this was just my discussion of the past two rounds of the playoffs. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day. Stay safe out there. And as always, stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more. We're going to have a video coming out very soon about the Super Bowl. Once we get there, I'll preview it. So stay tuned.